A spectre is haunting Europe, the spectre of communism. This is how the Communist Manifesto begins. The use of the term spectre was not a whim of Karl Marx. The spectre exists in another dimension, and is forged by hate, degenerated elements on the low planes of the universe. Originally, it took on the form of a serpent. As it reaches the surface dimension, it manifests as a red dragon. It keeps company with Satan, who hates all that is divine and just. The ultimate goal of the spectre is to destroy humankind, when the divine eventually returns and offers salvation to mankind. The spectre tells human beings to not believe in the divine. It ruins human morality to the point where they cannot understand divine instructions and will be eliminated. One's primordial spirit will be permanently destroyed. People may think that communism, like all other kinds of doctrine, is a trend of thought or a failed attempt. That is wrong. Communism is neither a trend of thought nor an attempt. It is not something that humans could come up with. Communism is a devil's doctrine. It is something that the spectre forcibly imposed on humankind to wreak havoc in the world. It came to destroy mankind. Because they are right in the middle of it, people cannot see through the evil spectre's tricks. Today, by reflecting on the history of the Communist Party in the past century, we can clearly see the roadmap carefully designed by the Communist spectre to destroy humanity. Marx and his followers are the human representatives chosen by the evil spectre to carry out its plan. They started communism on Earth. Let's start with Marx's evil cult beliefs and the spectre's roadmap. Marx was born into a wealthy Jewish family. At the age of 6, his father abandoned Judaism and converted to Christianity. Marx was also baptized as a Christian at the same church. He used to praise God enthusiastically in his writings. However, mysterious things happened. Marx suddenly developed an incredible hatred towards God. A totally different Marx appeared. Western Marxist researchers found that Marx's transformation was influenced by Satanic believers who drove him to worship Satan. Satan is the devil. This will shock many Chinese people. We might as well explore Marx's own writings to observe his process of demonic transformation, as well as his inner world full of violence and hatred. At the age of 18, Marx wrote a play called Orlenum, in which he wrote, "Orlenum, all lost. This pygmy universe collapses. Soon I shall clasp eternity and howl humanity's giant curse into its ear. The abyss yawns, gapping night to both of us. If you sink down, smiling, I'll follow you and whisper to you, down, come with me, comrade. If aught besides that frenzy could devour, I'd leap therein, though I must smash a world that towered high between myself and it." The inexplicable hatred and violence in Marx's heart makes people tremble with fear. In another poem, The Fiddler, Marx wrote, "How so? I plunge without fail, my blood-back sabre into your soul. With Satan I have struck my deal. I play the death march fast and free." In The Pale Maiden, Marx wrote, "Thus heaven I've forfeited, my soul, once true to God, is chosen for hell." In the poem Human Pride, Marx conceded that his goal is not to improve the world, but to destroy the world and take pride therein. Then the gauntlet do I fling, scornful in the world's wide open face. Down the giant she-dwarf, whimpering, plunges, cannot crush my happiness. Like unto a god I dare, through that ruined realm in triumph roam. Every word is deed and fire, and my bosom like the Maker's own. Where did Marx's hatred towards the world come from? Marx provided some clues in his work, Invocation of One in Despair. So a God has snatched from me my all, in the curse and rack of destiny. All his words are gone beyond recall, nothing but revenge is left to me. I shall build my throne high overhead, cold, tremendous shall its summit be, for its bulwark, superstitious dread, for its marshal, blackest agony. In a letter to his father, Marx wrote, "A curtain was fallen, my holiest of holies was ripped apart, and new gods had to be set in their place. A true unrest has taken mastery of me, and I will not be able to calm the excited spirits until I am in your dear presence." Karl Marx's heart went demonic. In the poem On Hegel, he wrote with arrogance, "Since I have found the highest of things and the depth of them also, rude am I as a god, cloaked by the dark like a god." It is no secret that Marx turns demonic. Marx's writings, letters, and the large amount of research done by Western scholars to prove this point are all open to the general public. Only they have been deliberately overlooked by communist countries. According to Mr. Richard Wurmbrand, author of Marx and Satan, when he contacted the Moscow Marxist College, he was told that there are a total of 100 volumes written by Marx, of which only 13 volumes have been published. At that time, Marx wanted nothing other than to destroy the world. He did not want to do anything for the proletariat or the workers and peasants. However, as a man who was very clever and well educated, had a heart full of hatred and violence, opposed God, cursed the human race, and worshipped the devil, Marx was the perfect human agent sought after by the evil communist spectre. The evil spectre thus chose Marx. Marx, who believed in the occult and hated God, was not an atheist himself. He turned communism into an atheistic cult, and used atheism and the communist cult to fight against God, so as to accomplish the mission of the evil communist spectre to destroy humanity. As a result, the bloody communist revolution, seemingly chaotic and disorganized, was in reality deliberately arranged by the evil spectre. The spectre's target is the Central Kingdom, China. It knows that if it can dominate China, it can dominate the entire world. However, the 5,000 years of Chinese culture and the spirit of Chinese people cannot accommodate communism, which is hostile to gods and advocates violence. Therefore, the evil communist spectre began a devious conspiracy. The first step, budding in Europe. In the Manifesto of the Communist Party, published in 1848, Marx regarded atheism with hatred towards God and the philosophy of struggle as the core dogma of communism. Atheism and struggle complement each other and are indispensable to each other. Because they do not believe in God, they are afraid of neither heaven nor earth. They are not afraid of the principle of goodness is rewarded and evil faces retribution. Because they advocate struggle, they dare to fight against heaven, against earth, and against humans. Their fighting has no bottom line. Atheism and the philosophy of struggle have been the theoretical basis and operational guidelines of the Communist Party's bloody tyranny. The second step, experimentation in Russia. Because communism was unpopular, it took nearly half a century after the failure of the Paris Commune for Lenin to launch the October Revolution in Russia and to establish the world's first communist regime in 1917. The Soviet Union began to experiment with a series of harmful social systems and persecutory coercion of people for the very purpose of passing them to the Chinese Communist Party. The evil spectre's goal was to make its way into China. Soviet Russia, in the meantime, was the mere equivalent of a springboard. The third step, taking root in China. The Russian Communist Party spared no effort in supporting the CCP. They found agents in China, spent a lot of money, and put in a great deal of effort, eventually resulting in the formation of the CCP regime. On the surface, the CCP regarded the Soviet Union as its boss and vowed to defend the Soviets. In fact, the Soviet Union and Eastern European communist regimes played only supporting roles in this drama. The CCP was the main actor developed by the evil spectre. The fourth step. The US-Soviet Cold War allowed the CCP to destroy traditional Chinese culture behind closed doors. A huge communist camp emerged after World War II. In order to maintain this camp, the evil spectre made the Soviet Union military powerful and started a military confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union that lasted decades. Under the cover fire of the Soviet Union, the evil spectre freed the CCP's hands to deal with China's divinely bestowed culture, to destroy the Chinese civilization and erase Chinese people's faith. In a secluded environment, the CCP launched a series of political campaigns to forge a man-made disaster. It raised the giant baton of atheism and applied class struggle as its core policy, smashing China's 5,000-year traditional culture with the weapon of hatred, deception, fighting, and killing. It turns the standards of right and wrong, good and evil, upside down. It destroyed the nation known for its righteousness and propriety. It brainwashed the Chinese people, who had faith in the divine, into followers of Marxism and Leninism. The fifth step, Soviet Union's disintegration, CCP's rising. The traditional Chinese culture has been destroyed by the CCP. During this process, the CCP has accumulated a multitude of extreme methods to persecute people. When the communist spectre felt that the CCP was evil enough to carry out the next step, the mission of the Soviet Union as a springboard, testing ground and shield was thus completed. The huge communist camp collapsed, and the Soviet Union withdrew from the historical stage. The leading role of the communist gangsters was then inherited by the CCP. The sixth step, the economic explosion triggers moral collapse. With the military confrontation of the Cold War ending, an economic drama began to play out. How could a nation whose economy was destroyed by political campaigns get rich quickly? The spectre arranged for a massive transfer of wealth from the West to China. Why did Western capital and technology not flow into the Soviet Union after its collapse? Yet, after the CCP became the head of the communist gangsters, it attracted so much Western capital? Of course, people could come up with a variety of reasons to explain this phenomenon. In reality, it was the arrangement of the evil spectre, as it was time for the Soviet Union to withdraw and for the CCP to take center stage. To put it more specifically, the China sentiment of the West, especially of the American people, was also arranged for this moment. During the confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, China and the Soviet Union were not at peace either. The CCP cut off contact with the outside world, making China appear to be all alone. The CCP manifests its evilness mainly in the destruction of the Chinese culture and in the massacre of the people. However, it was not prominent in the international arena. As such, the Western world, which was hostile to the Soviet Union, still held a somewhat favorable impression of China, even though the CCP denounced the United States as having a wolf's ambition. The United States always cherished a special sentiment towards China and the Chinese people. Perhaps this is towards the Middle Kingdom. In short, after the new drama began, huge amounts of foreign capital and technology, which had been accumulated over the previous century in the West, poured into China. The hard-working and smart Chinese people, who suffered from poverty under the CCP's rule, worked even harder to make money. Thus, an economic miracle happened. The Chinese market attracted the world's money. Trillions of US dollars flowed into China. All markets of Western countries opened to China. The profit returned to China. The money earned by Western capitalists remained in China. The surge in China's foreign exchange reserves skyrocketed to the point that they did not know how to spend so much money. In the meantime, the CCP printed RMB worth several times its foreign reserve based on the exchange rate and released to the market. The market was overwhelmed with money. Later on, the soaring house prices required astronomical amounts of currency. The CCP's money printing machine could not stop. Wealth obtained overnight stunned even the Chinese themselves. Why did it come so fast and so easily? On the surface, it seemed to be a result of Chinese people's diligence. The truth is that without the evil spectre's wealth transfer scheme, it would have been impossible for the Chinese people to have such a sudden explosion of wealth. Since ancient times, the economic development of a normal society must be supported by corresponding moral standards. This is what has been called wealth and virtue. The evil spectre intentionally did the opposite in China. As the saying goes, when a country bumpkin strikes it rich, they get even more out of hand. The Chinese people went from glorifying poverty and abstinence to money worshipping and sexual freedom. The moral standards declined day by day, constantly breaking the moral bottom line. From the declining morality, an explosive economy emerged, forming a giant malformed economic monster. The purpose of the evil spectre in arranging this economic miracle is simple. Without economic power, the CCP would have no voice in the world. However, the evil spectre did not mean to make such an arrangement to help China to become powerful. The spectre wants the world to be dependent on the CCP in their economic and international affairs. When the CCP continues to lower the morality of Chinese people and persecute Chinese people's faith, the world would remain silent and turn a blind eye to its evil doings. At the same time, the spectre wants to use the declining morality in China to pull down the morality of the rest of the world, eventually moving towards total destruction. However, through globalization, the spectre created not only the transfer of wealth making Chinese people rich overnight, but also the mechanism for the wealth to disappear. Sooner or later, Western people would oppose the transfer of wealth. When the politicians are under pressure from the voters, these countries will change their ways and even join forces to go against the CCP. China's fake prosperity is no comparison to the Western economy. An economy without morality won't have sustainable growth either. Economic growth at the cost of morality will eventually collapse due to the lack of morality. The seventh step. The CCP is holding the world's morality hostage with economic means. Westerners say that freedom and democracy are universal values, and by investing in China and helping its economic growth, freedom and democracy will follow naturally. The evil spectre, however, has counted on using economic interests to encroach upon the West. It uses lust to make the West lose their moral principles, thereby becoming the accomplices of the CCP. Through common economic interests, the West is in the same boat as the CCP. This has proven to be true. In the face of economic interests, democracy and freedom have become worthless. At the same time, the communist ideology lurking in Western society has been tearing Western society apart by creating chaos and singing the praises of the CCP. What are the real universal values? The truthfulness, compassion, tolerance found in Chinese traditional culture are the true universal values. When such values were harshly suppressed by the CCP, when history needed the West to resist the CCP's atrocities, the West remained silent in the face of economic interests, and even helped the CCP in its crimes. In this sense, the free society in the West has been the accomplice and the victim. To have the West walk down the destructive path with the CCP is exactly what the evil spectre wants to accomplish. Some people may ask, China has changed so much. Is the Communist Party today the same as that of yesterday? In the first 3 decades of the CCP's rule, when being on the right track was the most important, power struggles were carried out in such a background. In the following decade, it became the opaque political factional struggles, so-called usurping power, and the Communist Party. The first 30 years were spent in revolution and production. It worked each time as class struggle is underway. The more class enemies one found, the higher the rank one was promoted to. In later decades, the CCP maintained its legitimacy using the economy. The pursuit of blood-stained GDP became the top priority, while ignoring people's livelihood and the environment, only cared for their ranking and wealth. In the first 3 decades, the CCP incited hatred in the people against the Kuomintang and the United States. In the next few decades, the CCP incited hatred against freedom, Western ideology, and the universal values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. In the first 30 years, to fight the heavens and the earth, and were dared to change a new sky for the sun and moon, and to destroy nature. In the next few decades, the people were lured into making a quick fortune at the cost of the environment, and over-consuming resources and assets that belong to the future generation. In the first 30 years, various political campaigns were waged, such as 3 anti-movement, 5 anti-movement, Great Leap Forward, Cultural Revolution. The last few decades witnessed campaigns such as anti-spiritual pollution, anti-liberalization, the Tiananmen massacre, the persecution of Falun Gong, the suppression of human rights activists. In the first 3 decades, husband and wife were made to turn against each other, producing a multitude of human tragedies. The CCP also instigated whistleblowing and rendered everyone enemies of one another. Methods used to persecute Falun Gong were more severe and evil. Countless brainwashing classes were opened. The CCP utilizes family ties, employment, wages, and housing to coercively transform Falun Gong practitioners. In the first 30 years, many false and wrong cases were fabricated in the name of the proletariat's dictatorship. In the last few decades, the forced harvesting of organs from Falun Gong and other prisoners of conscience for profit is a type of unprecedented evil on this planet. In the first 30 years, people were made to worship Mao. In the last few decades, people were made to worship money. All these are to turn people further away from the divine. In the first 30 years, having brainwashed people with atheism, the CCP swore to smash the old world to pieces. In the last few decades, in a series of atheistic campaigns, the CCP attacked traditional beliefs in the name of science. The propaganda from the media, newspapers, radio, and television was far-reaching. The degree of evil was unprecedented. In the first 3 decades, human nature was suffocated by struggle, and people dared not tell the truth. Lies were everywhere. In the following several decades, there was no trust in society. Counterfeits and poisonous foods were everywhere. Fake cigarettes, fake wine, fake milk powder, fake train tickets, and fake diplomas. For each of the goods, valuable documents and licenses on the market, there is an equivalent counterfeit. The toxic foods produced by high-tech were inconceivable by people in the first 30 years. In the first 3 decades, there was the lie of high-yielding farmland. In the following decades, the Tiananmen self-immolation hoax deceived countless people and incited lasting hatred. In the first 30 years, the CCP arbitrarily closed the country to the outside world. In the next few decades, there was the information blockade, sensitive word filtering, and real name monitoring system. In the first 30 years, The temples of Confucius were destroyed along with traditional culture. In the last few decades, the smashed temples of Confucius were renovated to make money from tourism at the cost of ruining traditional culture. In the first 3 decades, politics was in command, and the traditional belief system was wiped out. Using political methods to control the economy created an economic crisis. In the recent 30 years, money was put above all. Economic methods were used to deal with political issues. The lust for money, materialism, and erotic ecstasy were used to fill the vacuum of faith, causing a frightening moral crisis. Further comparison can be made, but is not necessary. The Communist Party's rule is constantly changing, but its evil nature and ultimate purpose have not changed, and never will. Throughout its decades of rule, the CCP destroyed culture and corrupted morality. This has been at the core of the communist evil spectre's goal to wreak havoc in China. Culture and morality are independent of each other. The destruction of traditional culture will cause a decline of social morality, and vice versa. The fall of social morality will directly reflect in the culture, leading to further deviation of culture. This will create a vicious circle where moral behavior and moral standards fall together. Who stole our kindness? It was the CCP. The CCP's destruction of traditional culture brought about the ethical degeneration, has created an evil environment where the standard for cultural morality fell. People living in such a distorted culture would find it difficult to detect the decline in moral standards. What was once considered immoral would be the new norm. It is noteworthy that the Communist Party has a basic tactic for mobilizing the people to rise up to a revolution. Firstly, lure them in with a little sweetness, then instill them with hatred, agitate them to beat the so-called enemies of the Communist Party. Finally, get rid of them when they cease to be useful. Peasants were stirred up in the campaign of crack down on the landlords. However, in the cooperative movement, peasants were stripped of their belongings and became the victim of the communist cult. In the People's Commune, people ate for free from the same big pot in order to dash into communism. This caused a famine during the years of favorable weather conditions. Tens of millions starved to death. Under the slogan of letting hundreds of flowers blossom, the CCP encouraged people to speak their mind. The intellectuals were so delighted that they forgot who they were dealing with. The anti-rightist movement that followed caused many elites to suffer tremendously. Some even lost their lives, incited by the saying of "rebellion is justified." The Red Guards began an unprecedented destruction with a vehement, revolutionary enthusiasm when they were no longer of any use to the CCP. The Red Guards were sent to the countryside to receive re-education from the poor and middle-class farmers. The so-called re-education in the countryside movement ruined the lives of an entire generation. Today, similar tragedies are still happening. Economic development brought some benefits to people. People pay attention to material gain and forget about virtues. On the surface, everyone wants to make money, and as quickly as possible. How much does virtue cost? People don't care or don't bother to care, since they are too busy making money. The society seems to be full of vitality and great prospects. Such sweet benefits push people to use their smarts to do unvirtuous deeds. Swindlers and counterfeits are everywhere. Some take pride in making fake products while damaging the environment. People's smartness and wisdom are used for the wrong things. People have been wondering, after over 30 years of development, why is China yet to create any world-famous brands? Why do the core components of high-end products that claim to have independent property rights mostly rely on imports? Why are the small bolts on aircraft carriers, military aircraft and high-speed rail all dependent on imports? Why must China's annual output of 40 billion ballpoint pens rely on imported ballpoints? Both innovation and basic research require a calm mind, interest, perseverance, and long-term dedication. Also, it requires a social environment in which people feel calm and settled. The Chinese people are compelled to go after easy money by all means possible. They resort to stealing if they can't make something themselves. Stealing technology has become a classy career. In a nation that has long been known for its high esteem of etiquette, the sense of shame is nowhere to be seen. The purpose of the evil spectre is neither to let people live a good life, nor to bring about a nation's revival. It gives people a little sweetness, but bitterness follows. The two prerequisites of sustainable economic growth are rule of law rather than rule by law, and credibility rather than relationship. These are precisely the most lacking in China. The foundation of rule by law and a credible society is morality. Because people do not practice morality, the economy experienced sudden growth. Without morality, the economy is doomed. Isn't it the same case for some Western politicians and businessmen? Many of them tasted a little sweetness and threw themselves into the arms of the CCP and the claws of the communist evil spectre. At the beginning, they still struggled to defend their consciences. However, as they stepped deeper into the trap of the CCP, they found themselves having no choice but to become the puppet of the CCP, giving up their souls to the evil spectre. Before they obtained ruling status, all communist parties took advantage of workers and peasants as cannon fodder for the revolution. After they seized power, workers and peasants remained the oppressed bottom class of society. Looking at the so-called old revolutionary areas, the people there still live grief-stricken lives. In the first 30 years of the CCP's rule, workers and peasants suffered a lot. After the reform and opening up, those who suffer the most are still workers and peasants. Hundreds of millions of migrant workers work hard for China's economy. However, they remain at the bottom of society. The household registration system labeled many as second-class citizens. Those with vested interest in the Communist Party possess the majority of the nation's wealth. It is only through the anti-corruption campaign, known as Hunting Tigers, that people have a peek into how far the Communist Party's corruption has come. Thousands of millions, billions, even tens of billions of yuan are numbers commonplace in corruption cases. According to a survey, a host of retired high-ranking cadres occupy more than 400,000 hotel-style luxury clinic units in hospitals. The annual expenditure amounts to over 50 billion RMB. If we take into account the healthcare costs and medical reimbursements, for the party officials, it amounts to 220 billion yuan. That is to say, 80% of China's nationwide healthcare expenses are used by just 8.5 million cadres. However, the workers and peasants who feed the cadres can't afford to go to the hospital, can't buy an apartment, can't send their kids to school, and don't have enough retirement savings. Communism claims that it wants to eliminate classes, nations, and private property in order to build a paradise in the human world, wherein everyone gives what they can and takes what they need. Let's take a look at the eradication of classes. How would the spectre eliminate social classes? Marxism believes that the way to eliminate classes is to let the proletariat overthrow the bourgeoisie, establish the dictatorship of the proletariat, and then make a transition to communism. How can social classes disappear under the proletariat dictatorship? Marx did not make it clear. He just said that the period of the proletariat dictatorship could be very long. During the proletariat dictatorship, the leaders at various levels of this regime became the new privileged class, the privileged people. because they do not believe in God and fear neither heaven nor earth. The so-called communist morality can only be an empty slogan. They tyrannically abuse their power over the populace, while blatantly claiming that they are the servants of the people. Most of the workers and peasants who participated in the Communist Party's revolution, with the exception of a small number who entered the privileged class, became victims under the oppression of the privileged. In the process of eradicating classes, new classes emerged. Everything is back to where it began. As the vicious cycle goes on, workers and peasants remain miserable. The fact that workers and peasants continue to suffer reveals that when the evil spectre deploys communism, it has never planned a feasible way out. Marx's communist society will never become a reality. It is no wonder that Marx did not say how the transition takes place. From a human point of view, Marxism would develop to wherever it ends up to be. Eventually, it achieves nothing. Under the surface of achieving nothing hides the ultimate goal of communism, the destruction of mankind. When communism is mentioned, what comes to people's mind is endless killing. The century-old history of communism is a history of killing, including the random killing of the innocents, and the targeted killing of those who refuse to obey. Communism is against the cosmos. It is something heaven's laws forbid. Therefore, it has been in crisis ever since it appeared in the world. In order to survive, it relentlessly escalated its tyrannical control of people, including killing. The Communist Party's approach is to give people a little sweetness, agitating them to take part in a revolution. However, many Communist Party followers were killed by the Communist Party. Those who were not killed became tools for slaughter. The signature of the Communist Party stems from human slaughter, ruthless killing of its own party members and its own compatriots. However, killing is not its real purpose at all. Killing is to create terror, which makes people obey the Spectre's arrangements, so that the Spectre will achieve its ultimate goal. The communist evil Spectre, composed of hatred and deteriorated substances, arranged this communist revolution in the human world. It aims to destroy the entire human race by destroying traditional culture and corrupting morality. It calls on people to betray the divine who made them, and corrupts them to the point of being incapable of understanding the divine's teachings, to the point where they are far below the moral bottom line the divine has set for them. The divine will have to abandon these people in such a situation. What faces this kind of person is utter destruction. The death of the human body doesn't necessarily indicate the genuine death of that life. The primordial spirit would reincarnate. However, when a person is morally corrupt to the point of being beyond salvation, the primordial spirit will be completely destroyed. That is the most horrifying and true death of a life, and is the ultimate goal of the evil spectre of communism. As people take a look at this world, they would come to realize a stunning fact: that the communist elements are everywhere, and that the Spectre is controlling the world. Various deviated notions that the communist demon has deliberately indoctrinated into the human being have spread unchecked and undetected across the globe. Those who are lost even take the indoctrinated notions as their own thoughts and visions. The criteria for judging goodness and evil, right and wrong, have been deviated drastically or turned upside down. The communist red demon has almost reached its goal through its evil tactics. As the communist evil spectre, hideously grinning, is about to celebrate its victory, most people to the contrary assume it is walking towards its deathbed. People in the world have not realized that it is they themselves who are on the verge of destruction. Can you imagine any situation more dangerous than this? The divine, with great compassion, never forgets people. When the devil plans the plot, the divine also arranges for the final awakening of human beings in the crisis. The divine grants people free will to choose between good and evil. However, which path people ultimately choose to take depends on themselves. Only when then morality of the entire society is restored, souls are purified. Traditions are restored and faith in the divine is rebuilt. Can human beings escape the calamity? There is no time to lose. Now is the moment for human beings to wake up.